The fog curled like ghostly fingers over the quiet highway as a red semi-truck rolled steadily through the night. The road was slick with light rain, and the hum of tires against wet asphalt was the only sound breaking the silence. Please like and subscribe to my channel for more contents like this. Inside the cab, Thomas Briggs, a middle-aged long-haul trucker with tired eyes and calloused hands, sipped stale coffee and stared ahead through the misted windshield. He had been driving for hours, miles, and hours of solitude that had become too familiar. Then something unusual caught his attention. He lifted his foot off the gas. A figure stood by the roadside, barely visible in the swirling fog. Thomas narrowed his eyes and leaned forward. As he got closer, the figure became clearer. A young woman, maybe in her early 20s, stood barefoot on the soggy grass. She was wearing what looked like a torn, white wedding dress. Her arms were wrapped tightly around her thin body, and her long black hair clung to her face in wet, tangled strands. The dress was stained with mud, and faint cuts marked her legs and arms. She didn't wave. She didn't move. She just stood there like she had no energy left. Thomas's gut tightened. It could be a setup, but something in the way she stood, like a wilted flower too tired to bend, made him pull over. The truck hissed as it came to a stop. Thomas climbed down slowly, keeping his palms open and his voice gentle. "Hey there," he called out. "You okay?" She flinched, but didn't run. Up close, Thomas could see her face, pale, sunken cheeks, and lips cracked from cold and hunger. There was a bruised flower tucked in her hair. "Do you need help?" he asked again, softer this time. She looked up, eyes wide and hollow. No words came, just a small, ashamed nod. Thomas slowly removed his flannel jacket and placed it over her shoulders. The girl clutched the jacket like it was a lifeline, her fingers trembling. "Come on," Thomas said gently. "Let's get you warm." He helped her into the cab of his truck, guiding her carefully. She didn't resist. She collapsed into the seat, curling up like a child, her bare feet tucked under her. Thomas turned the heater up and handed her a bottle of water and a pack of crackers he kept for emergencies. She devoured them silently. No questions yet. He didn't ask. He knew pain when he saw it. She wasn't ready to talk, and he wasn't going to push her. For miles they drove in silence. The rain tapped rhythmically on the windshield as Thomas kept his eyes on the road. The girl stayed curled by the door, wrapped in his jacket and the truck's spare blankets. It wasn't until they passed a gas station lit by flickering lights that she finally whispered, "My name's Mara." Thomas glanced at her, surprised to hear her voice. "I'm Thomas," he replied. "Nice to meet you, Mara." She gave a tiny nod, still not looking at him. Her voice cracked as she said, "Today was supposed to be my wedding." Thomas gripped the wheel tighter. "Your wedding?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mara stared out the window, her breath fogging the glass. "He left me at the altar," she said flatly. "Told everyone I wasn't good enough. That marrying me was a mistake." Her voice didn't shake. It was dry, hollow, like the pain had drained everything from her. Thomas swallowed hard, his jaw tightening. He'd seen a lot on the road. Accidents, heartbreak, sorrow. But something about this girl in a ruined wedding dress tore through him. "That's cruel," he finally said. "I'm sorry." Mara nodded slowly. "That wasn't the worst part," she whispered. He laughed. He and his friends. That they made bets on how long I'd last before I begged to come back. Thomas's heart twisted. His knuckles whitened against the wheel. "I ran," she added. "Ran out of that church. Across fields. Down roads. Didn't stop till I couldn't feel my legs." Thomas blinked away the sting in his eyes. He'd never understood how people could be so heartless. "You didn't deserve that," he said quietly. "None of it." Mara gave a bitter laugh, barely a sound. "Maybe I did," she said. "Maybe I'm just broken." Thomas pulled into a small rest stop. A neon diner sign flickered in the distance, promising hot coffee and warm food. He turned off the engine and looked at her. "Listen," he said firmly, "you're not broken. You've been hurt, badly, but that doesn't mean you're broken." Mara finally looked at him. Her eyes were tired but searching. "You don't know me." "No," Thomas agreed. "But I know what it means to be left in the dirt and feel like it's your fault. And I also know it's not." Outside, the rain slowed. Morning light tried to break through the clouds. He smiled gently. "Come on, let's get you some pancakes and hot chocolate. My treat." Mara hesitated. A tear slipped down her cheek. But it wasn't from sorrow alone. It was from something else. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. Safety. She nodded. Thomas stepped out and walked around to help her down from the cab. She stumbled slightly, barefoot and cold, but she held her head a little higher now. Still wrapped in his jacket, she walked beside him toward the glowing diner sign. Heads turned when they walked in, but Thomas didn't care. He guided her to a booth by the window, ignoring the stares. The waitress came over, eyeing Mara's appearance but saying nothing. "2 big breakfasts, please," Thomas said cheerfully. "Extra syrup, and some hot chocolate." Mara sat quietly, her hands wrapped around the warm mug when it came. She stared at the plate like it was too good to be hers. "It's okay," Thomas said softly, digging into his food like it was just another day. "Eat." Slowly, carefully, Mara took a bite, then another. Each chew seemed to loosen something inside her, something heavy she'd been carrying for too long. The clink of forks and the hum of conversation filled the warm diner air. Mara ate slowly at first, as if afraid someone might snatch the plate away. But with every bite, her shoulders relaxed. Her eyes flicked around the room. No one else mattered. Just the sound of Thomas sipping his coffee beside her, acting like nothing about this moment was strange. "Thank you," she said quietly. Her voice still shook. Thomas nodded. "No need to thank me. Everyone deserves a warm meal and a little kindness now and then." Mara stared down at her food, voice barely a whisper. Not everyone thinks that. When they finished, Thomas stood and paid the bill, slipping a tip under the edge of the plate. He motioned for her to follow. Outside, the mist had thinned and the cold air bit at their skin. "Where are we going?" Mara asked, holding his jacket close. "Nowhere special," Thomas said. "But you don't have to be out in this rain. I've got space in the cab. It's not fancy, but it's warm." She hesitated. "You sure?" "If I wasn't," he said with a chuckle, "I wouldn't have let you eat all my syrup." That made her smile just a little. Back inside the truck, Thomas handed her a clean pair of socks and a folded blanket from a plastic bin behind the seat. "They're yours now," he said. "I've got extras." Mara changed quietly, then curled up in the passenger seat. As Thomas started the engine, she whispered, "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stopped." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he focused on the road as the truck rolled back onto the highway. "Well," he finally said, "I figure someone out there gave me a second chance once. Maybe it's my turn to pass it on." Mara didn't speak for a long time after that. She just watched the trees blur past in streaks of green and gray. Every now and then, her eyes would close for a few seconds, but she wouldn't let herself sleep. It was as if she didn't trust peace yet. That night, they stopped at a truck stop outside Oklahoma. Thomas let her sleep in the bunk behind his seat. He handed her another blanket, made sure the heater worked, and gave her a bottle of water and granola bar. "You're safe here," he said. "Lock the door when I step out." Mara woke up to the smell of coffee and something frying. She stretched slowly, unsure where she was for a moment. But then she heard Thomas's voice outside the cab, chatting with a fellow driver. When he climbed in again with 2 paper bags, he handed her one. "Breakfast burrito," he said. "Best one west of Arkansas." She blinked at him, stunned. "Why are you being so kind?" she asked. "You don't know me. I could be anyone." Thomas looked at her seriously. "You're someone who needed help. That's enough." Mara looked away, but this time her eyes filled with tears, not fear but gratitude. Days passed, then a week. Mara stayed in the truck cab, helping Thomas however she could, keeping the logbook tidy, handing him snacks, chatting when the roads got long and lonely. She was quiet, but not afraid anymore. One evening, after they crossed into Kansas, Thomas pulled into a church parking lot. "Wait here a minute," he said. She watched him walk toward a woman waving from the steps. They spoke briefly, and then the woman looked toward the truck and smiled kindly. Thomas returned and opened the passenger door. "Her name's Rachel. She runs a shelter for women. It's safe, Mara." Mara's hands trembled as she gathered her few things. "You're leaving me here?" she asked, voice cracking. "Only if you want to stay," Thomas said. "No pressure. Just maybe it's a place to breathe." Mara stepped out slowly. Rachel greeted her with a soft smile and open arms. "You're welcome here," she said. "No judgment, just rest." Mara glanced back at Thomas. He nodded once, firmly. "I'll be back through next week," he added. "If you need a ride or want to talk, I'll stop by." For the first time since the highway, Mara reached for his hand. "Thank you, Thomas. I mean it." At the shelter, Mara was given fresh clothes, a soft bed, and time. She didn't have to explain herself. She started helping out in the kitchen, folding laundry, keeping quiet, but her presence was steady. When Thomas returned a week later, she was waiting by the door. "They let me stay," she said, "and I want to try something different." Thomas grinned. "You thinking of staying put?" She nodded. "I need to build something, not just run anymore." He offered her a small notebook. "Write it all down," he said. "Dreams, plans, whatever. It helps." Mara held it to her chest like gold. Months turned into a full year. Mara got a part-time job at the local diner washing dishes. She earned her GED through late-night study sessions at the library. Every now and then, Thomas rolled back through town. He'd stop by the diner, order coffee, and sit in his usual booth. "You look stronger," he'd say each time. Mara would laugh softly. "You gave me space to stand up," she'd reply. She never asked for much. She just showed up, worked hard, and learned to breathe again. Her past didn't define her anymore. It only reminded her how far she'd come. One afternoon, Rachel invited Mara to speak to a group of girls at the shelter. Mara hesitated. "Me?" she asked. "I'm not ready for that." Rachel smiled. "But they need to hear from someone who's lived it." That night, Mara stood in front of 5 young women, her hands shaking. "I thought I was nothing," she said, her voice thin but steady. "I thought no one would ever show up for me. But someone did." Afterward, one girl hugged her. "You helped me," she whispered. That night, Mara cried, not from sadness, but from knowing she mattered, even in a small way. The years that followed weren't perfect. There were setbacks, nights when old memories snuck back, whispers of shame trying to undo her progress. But Mara fought them with truth. She had a job, a room of her own, a growing group of girls who called her Miss Mara and asked for advice. She even learned to drive. Thomas mailed her an old coffee thermos one Christmas with a note, "Keep going, kid!" And she did. With every scar, every step, she built a life of her own. Not flashy, not fast, but solid, like bricks carefully laid down in the rain. One rainy afternoon, 5 years after that first meeting on the highway, Thomas rolled into the same Kansas town. The diner was still there, but it had changed. Now there were fresh flowers on the tables, and a small sign near the register read, "Safe Space, sponsored by HopeWorks." Thomas raised an eyebrow. Inside, he spotted her, Mara, now in her late 20s, wearing a smart blouse and jeans, hair tied neatly behind her head. She turned and saw him. In 2 seconds flat, she was across the room, wrapping him in the biggest hug she could manage. "You came," she whispered, barely holding back tears. "Course I did," he replied, smiling through the lump in his throat. "Heard this place had the best pie west of Missouri." She laughed, wiping her eyes. I want to show you something. She led him through a back hallway into a small office filled with flyers, folders, and photos of smiling girls. A wooden sign on the wall read, Mara's Place for Girls Starting Over. Thomas stood there speechless. It's yours. She nodded proudly. Started small, but we help a lot now. I couldn't have done any of this if you hadn't stopped that night. He pulled a crumpled envelope from his pocket. Funny, he said. I was planning to give you this. Inside was a worn-out photo from their first diner breakfast. Him in a flannel shirt, her in that ruined dress, holding a mug with both hands. On the back it read, One good choice can change 2 lives. Mara held it to her heart. You changed mine, she whispered. Thomas shook his head. You saved yourself. I just opened the door. They sat in the quiet office for a long time, no need for more words. Just 2 people who understood what second chances meant. Mara took him back to the front. The staff greeted him like family. A group of girls from the shelter waved. That's Thomas, Mara told them. He's the reason we're all here. He waved shyly and used to being the center of attention. They handed him a piece of cake and a handmade keychain. For your truck, one girl said. Thomas blinked fast to hold back emotion. Thank you, he managed. That night he parked under the same stars as years ago. Only this time his truck felt lighter, not from the cargo, but from the hope he now carried with him. As he drove off down the highway, the fog curled once more along the road, but didn't feel so lonely now. Somewhere in Kansas, a girl in a torn wedding dress had transformed into a woman with purpose. And somewhere deep in Thomas's heart, a prayer long forgotten had been answered. Mara watched the truck fade into the horizon, hand resting on the window pane of her office. Drive safe, old friend, she whispered. Then she turned back to her work, because there were more girls to help, more stories to rewrite, and more lights to leave on in the dark. Like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more contents like this, and let us know where you are watching from under the comment section.